Welcome everyone to this month's Kimball Talk. My name is Brian Field. I am the Director of Character Development for the National Fraternity of Kappa Delta Rho. Tonight we'll be hearing from Honorary Brother Chuck Ealey about his amazing career and his current endeavors. But first, I do have a few announcements before we get started. So the first one is please visit KDR.com and update your latest contact information on the My KDR panel. This helps us keep in touch with you so that we have the latest information, so we can keep sending you the great things that we're doing so you can attend those awesome programs and don't miss out. But also we use our database to help connect undergrad brothers with our alumni network. So it's really important that we have the latest information so that we can make sure that everything's correct so we can reach out to you. So it's really simple, kdr.com/mykdr, and you can just update your information and that'll be great. Kimball Talks are on the last Thursday of every month. So our next one will be on March 25th at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So please mark your calendars now and join us next month. This is our second for this semester and things are off to a great start. So super excited to see you all next month. We also have these sessions recorded and they are on our YouTube page. So if you go to our YouTube channel, just search KDR National, you can get caught up on all of the past Kimball Talks that we've had. If you have an interesting story, or if you have a career, or if you know someone, an alum brother who you think would be great to be featured in a Kimball Talk, we want to connect with them. So reach out to me. My email is bfield@kdr.com, or I'm sure you can get in touch with Joe or any one of us at the national office to share a contact, and we would love to feature someone that you want to hear from. And last but certainly not least, before we get started, just some housekeeping. Please make sure that your mic is on mute. We will be doing a question and answer session at the very end. And so while Brother Ealey is talking, if you have any questions or talking points, please jot them down. At the very end, I'll moderate a question and answer section. And so that'll be a lot of fun. So be prepared for that. So now to introduce this month's Kimball Talk speaker. Honorary Pi Alpha Brother Chuck Ealey will share his experience tonight as an undefeated NCAA College Football Quarterback, a professional CFL Quarterback, a successful executive in the business community, and volunteer. Brother Ealey grew up in Portsmouth, Ohio, where he got his start in football playing for Notre Dame High School. In his high school career, he led his team to 2 high school championships before getting a scholarship to attend the University of Toledo. As an undergrad at the University of Toledo, Chuck had an incredible football career and was starting quarterback from 1969 to 1971. During that time, he led the Rockets to a 35-0 winning streak, the most consecutive wins by a quarterback in college football history, a record that is still held by Brother Ealey to this day. Chuck also holds many other NCAA football records, titles, and was inducted into the MAC Hall of Fame and Citrus Bowl Hall of Fame. Denied the chance to be recruited as a quarterback in the NFL, Brother Ealey moved to Canada to play for the Hamilton Tiger Cats with the Canadian Football League. Chuck became the first Black quarterback in the CFL to win the CFL Grey Cup Championship, along with 1972 Rookie of the Year and Grey Cup Championship MVP. Chuck had a professional football career spanning 8 years playing for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers and the Toronto Argonauts. Following his athletic career, Brother Ealey became the Regional Director of Investors Group in Ontario and shares his investment knowledge at the local radio station. Ealey is featured in 2 documentaries, the Emmy-winning PBS documentary Undefeated, The Chuck Ealey Story, and Stone Thrower, The Chuck Ealey Story. Chuck established the Chuck Ealey Foundation and focuses his time to help people of all ages discover and embrace their undefeated spirit so they can better themselves and their community. Brother Ealey is married to his wife of nearly 50 years, Sherry, and has 3 children and 6 grandchildren. So without further ado, I pass the mic over to Honorary Brother Chuck Ealey. Chuck, thank you so much for being here tonight.
Well, thank you, Brian. I appreciate it. Looking forward to it. So I'm just going to go right into some of the things, unless you have some more introduction information you need to go out. But first, let me just say what I'm going to try to do is make this very easy in every aspect of the conversation. So what I'm going to do is give you a background how I got from there in Portsmouth to here in Canada and all the processes in there. In the second phase, I'm going to talk about some of the things I learned and that I try to apply in my life, not only in sport, but business and just life in general. And then open up some questions for some of you that are from Toledo that might be on the air here. You know a lot of this anyway, based on the things that have happened. So with that in mind, let me just start off and say, it was mentioned that I was born in Portsmouth, Ohio. Now I know you have people here who are from all over the country, okay, I assume. But there are those in Toledo, those were Portsmouth and Southern Ohio where I grew up. In the time and the age that I'm going on, because most of your people there are fairly young compared to me, and there may be a couple in there that's close, but for the most part, I grew up in a pretty tough area in Portsmouth, Ohio, which is down on the Ohio River, just about 100 miles east of Cincinnati, across the river, the Ohio River to Kentucky. And it was a pretty tough time at the time because my father, who probably came back from the war and married my mom, but they were divorced very early in my life. I don't even remember living in the same house with my dad because when they divorced very early. And my mother, unfortunately, had to work for her family early and quit school, and she only had an 8th grade education. So her biggest thing for me was to make sure I got an education. I had no idea how that was going to happen, but sport became the vehicle that probably gave me the best opportunity to do that. We lived in an area that was pretty condensed, and so I can say this here to America, but in Canada, it's not always the same as far as what we refer to. I lived in the projects in a very subsidized housing area with just me and my mom. And she was like one of these ladies from the help. You know, she went out to do the clothing, the laundry, and make money and do that. So we didn't have a whole lot. Actually, we were poor, but from the concepts of most people's thought process of growing up. But the advantage or disadvantage of having that, we found a great opening in the world of sport. At least I did, and in the community. Sport became the vehicle. It became a way out that we all saw, not only for the moments and the things that we were going through with the difficulties of time and food and just social things that were happening in and around us. That became a great outlet. So we'd go to the park and we would, on Saturdays or after school, if we weren't praying, we'd go there and we would go at 9 o'clock in the morning. We wouldn't get home till 6 o'clock. And it was just in our backyard of the projects where we were. And I played with some guys that you may know the names. I don't know if you're interested in baseball, but 2 of the guys played in Major League Baseball. Larry Heisel, who ended up coaching with the Blue Jays for a while, and Al Oliver, both of them, and Al played for the Blue Jays. These guys, and Gene Tennis was from the area, so it was a big baseball area. And I played baseball for 2 or 3 years in the Pony League, and then football kind of gravitated to my biggest interest versus the baseball. These 2 guys went on and played. Larry and I would go to the park every weekend almost, and we would play one-on-one basketball. Now, he was a first-team All-American basketball player in high school. He could have gone to school with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and he got a UCLA scholarship, but he chose baseball. But we would have fun because he would give me 20 points. We'd play a game of 24, and most of the time he would beat me because he wouldn't let me shoot because he's a foot taller than me. And that was the whole point. The whole point was to drive me to get better and to make sure that he played hard enough when we were practicing, when we were playing, that he would get something out of that as well. And he knew that if he gave me a chance to shoot, that I would get it. And so we did that. Then we went to play baseball. Then we went to play football in the park. And this was a great outlet for us in regards to some of the troubles and the turbulence that was going on at the time. And it wasn't just turbulence of social, it was the turbulence of home life. Because being poor and raised in the community, basically, where many of the fathers were alcoholics coming back from the war and getting involved. And this is a part of the story that people don't really know and don't really understand. And so my drive was to go get an education. And after grade 6, I started going to the Catholic middle school and then into Notre Dame, the high school. That gave me a great different time because in the community we lived in, the African American, as we refer to it now, it was just that community. Our area went from the 10th Street to the 16th Street to the riverbank to up the hill where the white folks live, we called it. And so I had to go that way to get to school to go to Notre Dame. And it was no fear, it was not a tension or anything like that. But as I got older, the issues that compounded the world we lived in was the civil rights and all the things that along with that. That put a great deal of pressure on the situation because the community wasn't necessarily socially acceptance to the commingling of the two cultures, as I like to say. But yet still, when I went to the high school, I went to a high school that was all white. Well, I shouldn't say all white, I was there. There was about 500 kids there, and there was about 5 black students in the whole school. And it became one of the best things I did. And I couldn't pay, so I worked my way through the school by buffing the floors in the summertime and sort of, because it was school, you had to pay a tuition. But I wanted to go there because that was it. So I would go there to school in the daytime and back to the village in the after school and after practice. And that was the way I was building myself to go. And then I started improving in all the different areas of sport. I was a good basketball player. After playing with Larry, you had to learn how to be good, or reasonably good. But football became the big thing, and as it grew up in the communities in there. And so I excelled in football. I was hoping to get a basketball scholarship, but they came down and looked at me at football. Well, a couple of universities in my senior year. After we won 2 years of being undefeated, and we won the state champ in our class that year, Ohio U came down, didn't come back. I went to, you would know this, yesterday when I was speaking to people in Canada, they didn't necessarily know who this person was. But I went to Miami of Ohio, and Bo Schemblecker was coaching at Miami of Ohio. Bo offered me a scholarship, but it was like, well, Chuck, we'd like for you to come. We want you to be the 3rd quarterback, and we're going to put you a defensive back. And I said, I don't know why I said this, but I said, no. I said, no, Bo. No. So anyway, I left, and he sent an assistant coach down to try to get me to convince me to do that. And I still said, no, here I am at 17, 18 years old, and I don't have anything, but I'm sort of trying to, I wasn't meaning to be dictatorial to the thought process. I just knew what I wanted to do and, to go. Now, if everything got worse, I would probably have taken that, but I went on to Dayton, University of Dayton, and see what they had to say. And then finally, one of the coaches from Toledo came down to see me and Jim Goodman, the other guy that went with me to Toledo. And he came down and he saw me playing a basketball game. And I scored 30 points and shot the last basket to win the game. And he said to me, "You're a winner. We want you to come up to Toledo." So the following week I went to Toledo. Frank Lauterbur, who was the head coach there at the end, we talked and he talked, and he said, "What do you want?" I said, "I just want to play quarterback and I want a scholarship." He said, "Okay, we're going to give you a full scholarship and give you a full chance to play quarterback." And I said, "Give me the paper." He gave it to me and I signed it. And that was it, because I didn't have to travel to any other schools. I just wanted to get to a point where I could fundamentally get my education. Now, after that, I'm on my way to Toledo. And I don't know, some people probably thought these last few years of political stuff that goes on, it was a tough year, or some years are going on, but nothing was tougher than I think the time I was in school going to the University of Toledo. If you remember what was happening in American history, most of you, like I said, probably are too young to understand the totality of what was going on. But there was Martin Luther King was assassinated, Bobby Kennedy, John Kennedy was assassinated during this civil rights movement, which was a big movement, obviously, based on the African Americans trying to make sure that they moved on and that they got the right thing. So it was tough. They had the war in Vietnam that was going on. And it was big because everybody was afraid that they would be drafted and be taken away from school. And so that pressure was on. And as I moved from a city the size of 20, 25,000 people into a Toledo, 200,000 or 300,000, whatever the population was, it was a big culture shift to me. Even coming from Portsmouth, I see we come in, and I come in and I see the kids from Detroit and Cleveland with the big afros, bigger than mine, and mine was just hair. These things are going on. And then, from New York, Cleveland, Detroit, even again, one or two guys that were from California, African Americans. And then you had the farm fields of Ohio and Archibald and Montpelier. Some of these kids had never probably had a black kid on their team. And all the social unrest that's going on, all these things that are happening, you look at the situation, and only ones that know this is probably us as the players on that team. What's going on? Kind of idea, because you kind of have to filter down and get to know people, which was one of the issues that was with me, because Jim Goodman and his parents who took me around, he was my offensive lineman in Portsmouth, so he signed the same day I did there, and it was a big important issue for both of us. And as I began to work my way through, even as a freshman, I began to work my way into, and I always tell Canadians up here who are bilingual in a lot of cases with the French, I said I was bilingual. I knew how to talk to the white guys and I knew how to talk to the black guys. And I said, so my job was to make sure that we pulled that stuff together, because that language had to be one that everybody can pull together. And it was natural. It wasn't trying to be something that I wasn't. And I remember though, when I first landed in Toledo, with I don't know what they were called, but the Black Panthers or something. And they're marching down the street with guns and bullets across their chest. And I say, I'm in the wrong place. This is not where I want to be. And so it was just it wasn't on campus. And then we had the thing that happened with Kent State, with the killing of the military that took place there. So all this social stuff was going on. And now we had to win through this whole process, and we had to go through this process. So that as I got to university and gone through much of the stuff there with the Kent State and all of the things that happened within Toledo while I was there, and we start winning in our sophomore year. And I think one of the bigger games that we had was in my third game, I think, and some of the guys who were Toledo there, I think it was the third game was against Bowling Green. And we had beat OU, who had beaten Minnesota. And so we were coming down there, and that was probably the kickoff where in the third game when I kind of recognized it was my team now, because we came back from behind and won the game. And then next we just kept winning. And kept winning those type of games, and all the things that paired out. And then in the middle of this, my mother had remarried, and then I had a brother, and just when I was 17, and I had gone to Toledo, and he had contracted cancer while he was in Portsmouth, and they moved to Dayton to get some medical treatment and some other things that were going on. And what I found myself doing in my late my sophomore year into my junior year, going back and forth after a game to Dayton to deal with what was the crisis that was happening with my brother at different times. And nobody really knew it. Nobody of my teammates knew it. I never told them, because I said, I don't want this to be something, if something happens, that people are going to fall back on that, or I'm going to fall back on that and say, oh, that's happening. It's just tough and thing. And it wasn't until after in my junior year, he passed away, and I was there with him when it happened. And then I told the guys on the team, and they couldn't believe it. They couldn't believe that that I never said anything, or that they knew it. And I said, well, and the reason was I just didn't want it to be an issue, but it was an issue in the back of my head. But I kept playing, and I kept playing, and I kept playing. And then in my senior year, that was not on the table. And we finished up our senior year where we were undefeated, won 3 Tangerine Bowl games, and all the stuff that goes with it. As for me, and nobody really pictured us winning 35 straight games in a row. And you don't think of that. You just do one game. People say, how you do it? It's just one game at a time. I mean, you can't think of it any other way. Even when I remember Christine Brennan was saying one of the things, the sports writer, when she was in the stands and saying, when was the last, I think it was against Villanova, we were 7-7 in the first my senior year, where Jack Murphy took over for Frank Lauterbur, and changing coaches in the middle of 24 games of undefeatedness, you're going to go, okay, what's going to happen? So it was pretty tight. And they thought we were going to lose, but we got a good pass down the field just in time to kick the field goal and win 10-7. And then we kept the information going. Some tougher things happened when we were playing. We played against Marshall the week before they crashed, and all those guys passed away on the plane. But one of the interesting things that did take place is, I don't know, you don't have to hold up your hands because I couldn't see them all anyway, who all was there. But the game We Are Marshall, the movie, anybody familiar with that? You know that? Well, it's funny because I was watching that movie, We Are Marshall, and you remember they were having this remembrance of the plane crash, and they were having a big bonfire to not celebrate, but recognize what had taken place the last year with this freshman team that they got. Well, the team that they were playing that next day after that, what they never said in that thing, was us. And I remember that they were having this big bonfire because I got hurt on my shoulder the week before against Northern Illinois, and there was a chance that I wouldn't even start the game because there were a bunch of freshmen in regards to it. And the coach Murphy said, well, I think we better start you just to get ahead, because they had this all hoopla thing. So I started the game, and the reason I'm telling you is I started the game and I played one quarter and we were up 21-0. So he pulled me out and put Bruce in, Bruce Arthur, the backup quarterback. And to this day, I tell people, if I didn't start this game, none of this conversation would be happening with you, because I would have not had 35-0 as far as a record is concerned. And it's so easy that in one of those games, my life would have took a whole different channel in a number of different ways if something that simple could have changed it. But we won, and we won the rest of the games for the rest of the season. And at the end of the season, people were asking me, I'm getting drafted there in the NFL. And I said, well, we'll see. But the NFL did not have any African-American quarterbacks, and I had a feeling they weren't going to take me. And the point for me was to get my education. I didn't even have any aspirations to play professional football. People don't believe that, but I said that wasn't even on my dining room card or something like that. My avenue was, I understood enough, and when I was talking to kids, that the education meant more to me than just playing professional football, if that was going to happen. Long story short, when the agent came to me and was talking to me, and we kind of got this feeling from some of the things were being said that I signed in Canada and some of the other things that were going, which were not true. But we wanted the NFL to know that if I was going to go into the NFL, I only wanted to go as a quarterback. I didn't want to go as a wide receiver, didn't want to go as a defensive back. And I think what I try to tell young people that I'm working with or talking to, and who have this aspiration to go play in professional basketball, football, baseball, whatever, I say, get your education, because the rest is just bonus. Because if you don't make it, and the percentages that you don't make is very high, that you won't make another team. Everybody is not going to be on the NFL or the NBA or wherever, but everybody has the opportunity to get a good education to be able to control their own destiny. You know, some people catch it, some people don't. But that was my thing. So when they came and they said they wanted me to come a defensive back, I got a call from Denver and Kansas City. And I can say this to you who know football very much in the States, even more so. When two teams call you and ask a quarterback to run a 40 for time, you know you're not going to play quarterback. That is not the issue. So I kind of hit quickly. I said, no, that's okay. I'll pass. And I was going to go right into business, and there's a business person there who became a good friend and a mentor, and the guys who were there who were from Toledo, named John Savage, and John and I became mentor-mentee kind of idea, and he got me on straightened on some things there, and he was going to do something with his business to have me involved with it, and I was ready to go. And then Canada came down and asked me would I come and play, and I said, well, I don't know. And they said, well, we'd like you to come. We think you have a good opportunity there. Then I thought about it, and I said, okay, I'll give it 4 or 5 years. and then I'll go back. But so the business opportunity there came out of play. Went to Canada, won the Grey Cup the first year, played 6 more years in the CFL, only won the one Grey Cup. But at the same time, it was a whole different avenue, because when I thought I crossed the bridge in Detroit, all you see getting into the cities of Canada, you didn't see anything until you get to one of the cities, and I go into Hamilton, and I start looking around. Oh, these buildings are the same as ours. You know, it's not a different country. You know, these cars are the same as ours. It's not a different country. I had very little knowledge of what it would be like, and it became very easy to live there and do that. So I finished playing there, and I went into the first job I had, believe it or not, was working for John Deere Limited, not Investors. It was John Deere I worked for about 7 or 8 years. They say, what an odd situation. A black guy from Portsmouth working in the Mennonite farm country selling combines and balers. And so I kind of stretched the period of mindset during this whole process of just sort of doing that type of thing. And it was good. You met some really down to earth people, and they accepted me just like I was like in their house. And it was a great opportunity experience. And then I went to work for Investors Group, which is like American Express Advisors. I was the financial advisor, became a bid manager. Then I ran an office for about 60 staff, between advisors and staff, and managed that for about 10, 15 years. And then I decided to, sort of climb down and gradually walk back into the sales, and then back into another time, just taking time off in career. And since I was doing all that, then I went into, right now I do some work as a coach for some Ford dealerships in the area, which means it's 4 or 5 or 6 days of my month that I go and coach the avenue of communication and some of the other things that go on, that type of thing. But I've been a chair of boards of directors of Sports Council, even set up and became part of a living arts center, talking about the arts and culture and different things that happened, became chairman of the board of directors there, and had some real learning processes that would have never, ever come if I'd have done some of the other things that were possible there. So that's basically just a fast run of where I've gone and where I've been. But during all of that, and I'm just watching the time because I want to leave you some time for education, for questions. The big thing is, once I finished what I was doing, is when I went there, it says, what now? After I left the CFL, and what was I going to do? And those are the things that happened. And I did some TV work for CBC Sports for a year. So I just did a number of those type of things. But I wanted to tell you more about, in the whole process, what I really learned and what has become a philosophical thought process for me. And I'm saying this to all of you, whether you're young, old, male or female, whatever the situation may be. There's 3 things that I really spend time talking to young people, and sometimes business and corporations. When I speak, I tell people, I speak as much as corporations in a big context. I speak because my daughter wrote this book, and I'll tell you about it in a second, called The Stone Thrower. And she also had a child's book that goes along with it. So we'll go to grade 2s and grade 3s. And what do you say to them? You just wear your shirt, your football shirt, and hold your hands up and say you played on TV, and they just clap. Hey! You don't have to say anything. You just walk in there. So that's one of the best crowds I get, as far as what happens. So it becomes a very diverse area of what you're working with. But 3 things I learned: to be inward, to be outward, and to be upward. If anything else hits you, remember this: be inward, outward, and upward. And what I mean by that is that physically, how do you begin to position yourself? It's about you, and it's about me. And my daughter wrote this book, and I don't know if it might be, it's in the website information, called The Stone Thrower. And where she got that from is, she began, when she did her master's, and she was looking at doing a book because she's a writer. She's got a #1 bestseller going on right now, which is a novel. Anyway, that's another story. But she wrote this. She was doing this for her master's, and she was doing interviews with me. And she called the book The Stone Thrower. And the reason she called it Stone Thrower, when I was a kid, wanting to be the best I could be, I could not always get people to catch passes from me. Everybody's ready to go after practice. Everybody's ready to go, and I'm ready to practice and learn how to get better. So a lot of times we had a train that ran right through the middle of our town, or at least our community. And it had these boulders underneath the train tracks, holding up the tracks. And every time the track comes, you just have to wait until they go. And between the two streets, there was like an alleyway. And I would go and get the stones. And on the truck, I mean, the cars were N&W, Norfolk and Western Railroad. And it was a coal car, and they were hauling coal or they were empty. And I practiced as a quarterback throwing at the letters on the train. So it goes slow, then it pick up speed. So you get all this depth of understanding of timing, like you were throwing a pass to someone. And it was very productive for me because it was something I can do as a kid. And I'm 13, 14 years old, trying to get better at this position that I'm learning. And so I was telling her this story and why I did it. And so she went, oh, a stone thrower. And that's where the story came from. But this inward thing is about a whole lot about us and for me. And I was telling you about playing with Larry in the park and playing basketball. But it's the physical avenue to be able to do the right things and be above everybody else. And that's how you get better. It's also the part of the mental game. I was telling somebody a story about Jim Brown. Jim Brown, the famous running back that we know in Ohio, well, around across the country, many years ago, much older than everybody else and even me, but he had this tremendous game against the New York Giants, and he ran for like 215, 20, 30 yards. And people say, how did you do that, Jim? How did you do that just with Nitsky and all these tough guys? He said, it was very easy. And he said, what do you mean easy? He said, I lived that game 3 or 4 times in the way. What do you mean you lived that game? You know, media guys, da, 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 da. And he said, I lived that game 2 or 3 times. He said, I visually saw myself running over people, running through them, running around the corner, so that when it came to the actual play, it was easy for me to do it. And what he was talking about is the mental attitude that we need to have when we begin to go to any profession, anything we do, and how we prepare ourselves and make that challenge out there for us to go. Napoleon Hill said, what the mind of man or woman can conceive and believe, the man of woman or man can achieve. And we only limit ourselves to what we do because we don't have that presentation. And so I learned how to do those type of things. At least this was part of the process. I couldn't told you that when I was picking at the training. I didn't know that. I was just doing it. But that's what was the process was. And as I went into business, the same process happened there. And how you begin to work there. Henry Ford says, if you think you can, if you think you can't, you're probably right. And as you begin to believe in yourself and you believe in the things you go, that's the inward component to you. I have this thing where I have about 10 New Year's resolutions that are anything that I read every year. And here's one, I'm going to share 3 of them with you. One of them says this: resolve to control your destiny. Don't be so busy trying to make a living that you forget to make a life. Decide who you want to be and what you want to achieve, and then stride boldly towards your vision. The most precious human commodity today is confidence. And how do you build that confidence? By what you do and how you begin to build on that. And that's the inward side of it. The outward side of it says this: it's about teamwork. We relate to teamwork in sport because that's what we've always built on. But teamwork goes way beyond just the work. It goes even to your family, right into your business and different things you could do. In the corporate view, there's once a thing, somebody in your group may know of this person. I heard about this story about a gentleman by the name of Charlie Plumb. Okay, Charlie Plumb was a Top Gun airplane pilot and flew on the U.S. Kitty Hawk, and it was about that thing's about 2 times the length of a football field, and it carries about 1,000 people from doing various jobs on that ship. And Charlie Plumb, as a Top Gun, flew over Vietnam, and on his 26th mission over Vietnam, he was shot, plane was hit, he parachuted out, landed safely, but he was captured, and he was tortured for about 5 years, they said. So finally, when they let him go after the war in Vietnam, he came back to the U.S., and he was in the restaurant or somewhere with his wife, and a gentleman came over to him and said, "You're Charlie Plumb." He said, "Yeah, that's right." He said, "You flew on the U.S. Kitty Hawk." He said, "Yes, that's right." And on your 26th mission, you were parachuted out of the plane because you got hit and knocked down. He said, "Yeah, that's right. How'd you know that?" He said, "I'm the man that packed your parachute." and Charlie stood up and hugged him, because if that parachute did not work, he wouldn't be here. And when I try to tell people who are involved with teams, it doesn't matter if you pack the parachute or if you're the Top Gun or anything else in between. It is about the job we all have to do, with which we've been blessed with to do, to make that team a winner. And that's the same thing that happens in football. And I think we have people on our teams that basically weren't necessarily the best, but they contributed practice or they contributed things. And you have to make, in business too, you need to make them feel as valuable as the Top Gun or whoever that person is to be. And if you can get that across to your teams, you're probably going to be in a good position to keep moving into the right direction. And selling to different generations of ages and whatever you might be able to work, understand that thing. A person 60 years, I was telling some of the people that I work with from the forward as I'm communicating with sales. And I have a simple principle I go with them. I say, okay, if you want to sell a F-150 truck and you had a 35-year-old that wants to buy it and you had a 65-year-old, what would you do different? Or is there anything you would do different? And a long story short, you need to understand the communication process. Those two people, 35 wants to text, 65 wants to phone. And, or this one wants you to, text them, and this one wants an email. I mean, so understand the communication process between the differences of those ages or something. So what I'm saying is that you have to have different levels of things that you need to know and accomplish. And so you can sell across generations. So the second message you want to leave you is this: resolve to be a global citizen, fully open to the cultures and influence of others. There's a direct correlation between the personal well-being and the openness to other people's ideas and cultures. If someone has a different point of view, they're probably right as well. There are no absolutes anymore, so welcome different opinions. Become a one-person champion of plurality. Not only will you make lots of new friends, but you'll also gather multiple reference points to help you resolve personal challenges. And that's the one thing that, we need to understand that, I mean, I at least understand with me, I had to learn different ways that my play calling is not necessarily right. It's right if it works, but when it does, I've got to be really listening to adapt to the situations around. Finally, upward. And the principle that guides us. What's the authority? What is the value that you hold that makes those other two things stick together? I don't know. Maybe it's your parents. Maybe it's you think it's just you. Maybe it's your faith and what you believe in. What is that makes that glue stick that you can hold on and know that's the honest truth based off of what you feel? And I always tell my kids, I say, if it's not against what your faith and what you believe on, if it's not against necessarily what we have taught you as mom and dad, the thing that you have to measure when you get that thing contested, how does it feel with your gut? If your gut's uncomfortable, don't go there. If you get to that position. So I know that becomes very important. So let me read you this last one. Attitude. Resolve to stay brutally optimistic. See the opportunity in every difficulty and anticipate the most favorable outcome out of every situation. Whatever you look for, that's what you'll find. We can get better or we can get bitter. It all depends on the lessons we draw from each experience. Optimism is like electricity. Very little happens without it. Know this truth. You have all the resources you'll ever need to handle all the challenges you'll ever have. It's in the true emergencies that the true you emerges. And so we kind of work with it. Well, we do. I don't mean kind of. A program called the Undefeated Spirit within the Foundation. And it's about an attitude. I mean, Rick and I battle with this discussion all the time. I said, Rick, there's no fixed avenue to it. It's about attitude. It's, what are you going to do? You're not going to give up. And I started saying, I said, I'll give you an example. And when I started giving people an example, I said, undefeated spirit to me is, how do I fight through a broken home? I know that there's a light at the end of the tunnel when you keep digging. Poverty, civil rights, being rejected in football, brother dying of cancer, NFL rejected me, College Football Hall of Fame, which is another story, which is another moment that I can laugh about. See, all of these things are confrontations, but they don't stay. as long as you have an intentions that you want to move forward and go for it. I talk about a spiritual thing with some people in the faith, and there's a thing biblically that I read about the fruit of the Spirit: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, and self-control. Love, joy, and peace came from above. Patience, kindness, goodness is what I need to give to other people. Gentleness, faithfulness, and self-control is the inward side of me and what I need to have. So my life is not necessarily built on all the successes that you have in football and in business and all the things I've had in the past. And it's somewhat, my life somewhat reflects this statement: resolve to be habitually generous. Success is not something that you pursue. It is something that you attract by what you become. The more you give of yourself, the more favors you attract from others. People have a deep-rooted drive to give back. So resolve to search for ways to contribute to others. Here's an interesting aphorism: live above the line. If the line represents others' expectations of you, consistently surpass those expectations. You'll develop what a business author, Ken Blanchard, calls raving fans, people who become walking billboards for you. Now, for me, when my mother only had an 8th grade education and insisted on getting me up out of school, getting me up for school every day, give me whatever I needed for clothing, whatever we could have and afford, and pushed me out and say, you get your education. And now what I have been fortunate to have is the things that happened that went way behind football. My son just returned from Japan, where he lived for about 10 years, and he was a principal of a high school in Japan. Now, he wasn't speaking Japanese, it was an English school, I understand. But he moved back, he's now vice principal here. My middle daughter, she's a teacher leading some leadership things within the community. And the youngest daughter, who wrote the book and wrote the second book, is an author. She created a festival of literary diversity, where she brings people in to talk to them how they write on diverse books and things that don't always hit the general public. And I equate that all to my mom in regards to encouraging me and me making sure that my kids are going to be fine, and they are. And I know I don't like this, but maybe there's somebody from Ohio State out there. I have a grandson going to Ohio State on a scholarship next year for lacrosse, not football, lacrosse. So, I'll be down there a number of times. So, that's fundamentally where I basically have gone. Oh, that's good. That perfect time is 15 minutes. With my life and the things that are out there. And I want to encourage, especially the young men, and I'm sure that's all men that are in the fraternity there, to buckle things down for school and focus on the things that you want to have, because that's the light at the end of the tunnel and in the directions that you can go. And no one can tell me any different. And I know that some of the guys I played with who didn't finish what they should have finished in school were in a lot different position than I am today. So I'm very fortunate that way. So now I can open up for some questions in regards to some of the things I said, or something else that you might bug you, that you know about me or Rick.
Great. Thank you so much, Chuck. For this question and answer portion, if you have a question, please just put it in the chat and I will be moderating the questions. You can either put your question in the chat and I'll read it for you, or you can use the raise your hand feature and I'll just call on you whenever it's your turn. So if you have a question, either raise your hand and you can ask it, or put it in the chat. Doug Rammel, go ahead. Oh, so sorry, I muted you again.
Oh, okay. Well, hey, Chuck, it's great.
You just went on mute again.
You went on mute again, Doug. Third time's the charm.
There we go.
There we go.
Nothing like a tech guy not being able to run technology. Hey, Chuck, a fellow Toledo grad, Pi Alpha guy, actually played football in '86 and '87 and was a quarterback. So I played behind, would have been Kevin Meager and Mark Melfi, and AJ Sager was the starting quarterback when I first got on the team. But I was coached by Dan Simrell,
Yep.
And he was obviously a Toledo quarterback. Did he play after you, or were you guys roughly the same time frame?
No, he was my coach. He was one of the assistant coaches when he played for a couple of years, and then they got a head coach job at another smaller school. I can't remember what the school was, and he went down there to coach. I mean, like he was before me, and he was an assistant coach for a while. Then.
Well, he used to brag about how great an athlete you were and how strong your arm was, and so that was the big competition, was to see who could throw the ball the farthest. He claimed that you could. He claimed you could throw the ball 80 yards. Is that true?
I would have known that in college, but pretty close. I threw 75. We had a thing here in Toronto when the Blue Jays first came, and they brought their baseball player, and they brought me in with football and had us throw inside of this mesmerized building that was longer than what we could throw, and they measured it pretty close to 75 yards, 80 somewhere in there. But but that's not what you normally can do. That usually happens.
Well, it's great to hear your story, and really appreciate you spending some time with me.
Like I got to throw it 80 yards. You just know you got to throw it out there from this fast guy who's running down the field. It ends up being pretty long. Yes.
All right. I think next question goes to Jeffrey.
Hello, I'm another Pi Alpha. I graduate this semester. One of my question is, how and when did you become an honorary brother of the Pi Alpha chapter?
Well, I don't remember the date. I don't want to remember what happened to me, but no, it wasn't that bad. That was through Rick Longnecker. He convinced me to do it. I mean, I pledged in another fraternity, Kappa Alpha Psi, when I was in university, that I was a brother there. And so when Rick and I became close with what we were doing, and it was about, I would say it's probably 15 years ago now. I'm not an active person in the chapter.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, that's how I knew you were honorary brother. Like I'm one of the brothers that has started our family tree and like connecting that stuff out. So like I knew you weren't like one of the active members, but I knew you were an honorary brother. But just knowing like the timing of when you became.
Yeah, it was about 15 years ago when I was doing something. When Rick and I were been working on the foundation, which is the other part of what we do there in Toledo, and doing some work within the kids and young kids. And this year we could do with what's happening with the pandemic, so we were doing a little bit something else that we've been working at. So I've been talking to Rick almost every day, or emailing, or thing. And I say, Rick, is he on there? He's not in there, is he tonight?
No.
Well, I can talk about him then.
Yeah.
If I could. No, I ain't talking about. We get along fine. He's with me every day, and he's great on that computer, and we get a lot of help from him as far as keeping things rolling.
Oh, so Joe Rosenberg just responded. It was at one of our roast formals that we do every year in an alumni reunion.
Mm-hmm.
When you got it.
Well, we are lucky to have you as an honorary brother, Chuck. I will speak on behalf of everyone for sure. We do have a question from Eric Kovitz. He asks, what is the most important trait the USA team should learn from Canada regarding race relations? So that's the first question. And then the second question is, why?
Don't move too fast. Remember, I'm an athlete.
Okay, go.
We'll get the second.
Start with that. What is the most important trait the U.S. should learn from Canada regarding race relations?
You know what? That's a hard question because that makes some assumptions. That the one thing I found, Canada was very receptive when I came. Matter of fact, to the point it made me feel comfortable. There was not a situation where you felt that you were a different color, or you were a different person. I could go to anybody's house and they would, be there. It wouldn't be a defensive step. And so I don't think they think about it. Overall, everybody has their own biases and their own prejudices and things that will come in and out of their life. But as a society, they're very open to all cultures and things that are different than that. So that's when I went to Canada. When I went there, I'm looking around for something to be wrong sometimes, and it wasn't. And that's the only thing I can say. and it's a very natural avenue for my wife and I to gravitate to. That was different. It was just different the way they see the things around you. And I remember reading that thing about the cultures, accepting the cultures and accept the avenues of different people. And I was talking to a group yesterday, and I was talking to them. I said, and they were kind of surprised, because I said, when you start to think about, because it was about Black history, and I said, I get it, but I don't get it sometimes. But I just said, here's the avenue of if everybody closed their eyes and just didn't see the other people, how would we be treating each other different? Period. If everything was black in eyeballs and you couldn't see, this stuff wouldn't come up, and you wouldn't even have to think twice about it. So that's what I think. In for the most part, that's what I found in Canada.
Great. The second question is, why are you not in the college football HOF?
You ask me? You ask me? Why don't you go ask those guys? I was telling somebody the other day, like right now, it always comes out at this time of the year. And I don't know where you are, but in Toledo, there was a lot of the Tony Dungy.
I'm in Arkansas.
Yeah, all of that.
SEC heaven.
It hasn't what?
I'm in Arkansas, so SEC.
Arkansas.
Everything's college football where I am. It's still pro football here.
Yeah, Tony Dungy wrote an article, or it was part of an article that somebody sent me from somebody from Fox News. Wrote this long article about here's the long story short, about the College Football Hall of Fame. The rules they change them as they want to change them at times to meet whatever they want to meet. At the time when I was coming out, when I became eligible 5 years after you play or something like that, and I met all the criteria that they were supposed to have and everything, but that just never did happen because there was two people. One was Fran Tarkington, and the other was two boys. Two boys played in the NFL. He played.
Archie Manning,
who was head of that. They got vetted in because the rule says you have to be first team All-American at the teams that they pick, right? And the first team All-Americans, I was there, it was Pat Sullivan, but these two other people that they inducted, they were not in there. They got elected by the Football News. So when somebody said, well, Football News made Chuck a first team All-American, and they says, well, we changed the rule a couple of years ago, we won't count there. And so it created a whole schmoz. Anyway, here's the funny thing about it. I was telling someone, and they said, if they'd induct me 40 years ago, or whatever time frame it was, I would have been inducted and buried. But ever since they did not, every 2 or 3 years, this comes up again. Boom. Every generation starts to hear more and more and more. A lot of guys that got inducted, nobody talks about it anymore. It's gone. And I said, that's pretty good, because now we're talking about it again, so everybody understands the record that it's outstanding. That doesn't justify the behavior, but at the same time, if I was picking for somebody, I would be fighting for somebody else if it was, 35-0 that person won. And so that's just my thought. So, but at that stage, my life is happy. I'm still good.
Chuck, I don't know if you've seen it yet, but Dan LaPlaca just shared a Fox News Sports article that was released yesterday titled Chuck Ealey deserves to be in the College Football Hall of Fame. So I think we can all get on board with that.
Rick sent it to me. So I got it. Yeah. And that's what I said. Like I was speaking yesterday to someone, and some of the Canadians, this was for a business corporation, so it wasn't, everybody that's a ball player. But the owner, the CEO, he said, what? What do you mean? Can I write them about this? I said, no, there's enough going on. It's okay. So it was all right. It's okay. Like the beauty about winning 35-0, nobody can change that. And nobody has to prove anything about it. I don't have to prove anything. If they decide that they never want to do it, they're the ones that look bad in the process, not. And I feel sad for other kids or young people, males or female, who do it or do something that outstanding that they don't think that's worthy. And then one of the writers up here asked me, he said, did you graduate? I said, what do you mean I graduate? He said, well, that's one of the criteria. I said, did you have to graduate in 4 years? Oh, well, you have to graduate before they can put you in. I said, well, I was the only one in my graduating class that graduated on time. I was the first one out of there. So I said, that wasn't the issue. So I don't know what else they got to hold on to, but that was it. So they're hearing it. I mean, with the one that Tony Dungy wrote for the last 2 years, and this last one was pretty stern, that he kind of, what's the matter with you people?
Any other questions? We have a few more minutes. Any last minute questions? You can put it in the chat or raise your hand, or just anything you'd like to share.
Quite a group.
All right, Doug Rammel says, have you ever coached or been contacted by any of the current NFL quarterbacks?
No. You coach the quarterbacks or coach, period? Is that what you mean?
I think coach, period.
No, I haven't. I wouldn't do that. I mean, like, quarterbacks are the bad people, worst people to coach. You know, they're the worst. I wouldn't want a quarterback to be my coach. That's what Dan was, and I said, Dan, you can't coach. Somewhere. I said, you know, we're just dangerous because we think we know everything. You know, the logic doesn't hit us the same way. Because we did it, we think you should do it. You know, that's the avenue of the quarterback. You could be an assistant and help the person along, but don't put them in a head coach or something where they have to make. That's just my thought. You know, wouldn't want to do that.
Yeah. Jeffrey asks, where do you live now? And
well, that's a good question.
What's the latest update?
I live in Brampton, which is a suburb of Toronto. I live right around Toronto, Mississauga, and Toronto's right in the middle. So I'm about half an hour, 40 minutes to downtown Toronto.
Nice. When everything, you know, I'm up here in Syracuse, New York. So when everything goes, you know, we're all clear, I'm coming your way and we can grab coffee or something.
Yeah, you can have you'd have a good time. You ever been to Canada? You ever been to Toronto?
Not Toronto, but Vancouver.
Oh well, that's a pretty good place to be too. Yeah.
Honestly, anywhere when everything opens back up, anywhere is good with me. So
yeah, I know a lot of us are saying that. You know.
Yeah. Well, I think that is about it. We are at time. If anyone has any other questions, I can, you know, field those. If you want me to get in touch with Chuck for you, answer those burning questions you have, let me know.
Just send them to Rick. Rick, send them to Rick.
Yeah,
he'll get it to me.
Send it to good old Rick. He'll find a way to you for sure. Well, on behalf of everyone, thank you so much, Chuck, for sharing your story and spending some time with us today. We really appreciate it, and we're so glad that you are a part of us in every way. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, everybody. Good to see you. Be safe.
For everyone else, I hope you have a good month. I will see you back here, hopefully, March 25th for our next Kimball Talk. But in the meantime, please catch up on our YouTube channel to catch up on the past talks. But thank you all so much for coming. Have a good one.
See you.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Okay. Right. Take care.